Today, we are diving into the unexpected remarks made by President Donald Trump regarding South Africa. Recently, Trump accused the South African government of confiscating land and violating human rights, while threatening to cut off US funding until a full investigation is conducted. Welcome to Riks Europe, Joost Strydom, Chief Executive at the Orania movement.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
So how do you interpret Trump's recent comments about South Africa?
Well, we interpret two main things. The first one is that we see the fact that he halted all financial aid to South Africa and to the South African government, citing the fact that especially the expropriation of property without compensation, a law that's recently passed and signed by the South African president. Trump specifically cited that as an issue. But what is more important for us as a group of people, the Afrikaner people of South Africa, is that he recognized us as a distinct group, as something that haven't happened on an international level for quite a time. So we are very thankful to be recognized as a distinct group, as a people upon ourselves, as a group with our own identity. And that is actually, for us, almost the most important part of this executive order and the comments that came with it. Because the recognition of us as a group, as a people, also help us in the sense that we ask now that a territory for us can also be recognized, which will then be safe from expropriation without compensation, and a place where we can help with stability and safety in the broader region.
So do you see that his statements, do you consider them to be based on factual information or political rhetoric?
Well, there's always a combination of both. It's never one or the other in mainstream politics. But what I can say is what the facts are is that the president of South Africa did sign the expropriation with null compensation bill into an act. So it's quite clear that the government in South Africa can now expropriate property, not only farms, but property in general, without compensating the rightful owner. Furthermore, which is also concerning, is that recently a bill was passed removing Afrikaner parents' rights to make decisions in their own schools, which is of great concern. And all of these things happens against a broader context. It's not things that happened in isolation. To be honest, some of the things that was happening, as I recently also shared, is a lot of members of parliament in the South African parliament called for genocide against the white population in South Africa. You hear Julius Malema saying things like he will slit the throat of whiteness, and he's not calling for a genocide yet. While Andile, also a member of parliament, said that he will kill all the white men, all the white women, all the white children, and things like that, while the president of South Africa go and said that he will expropriate land and give it to his people, to our people, as he said, then implying that Afrikaners, who are passport-carrying citizens of this country, are not implied to be his people. So this rhetoric, this kind of hate-filled remarks, all of that sets a context. And then when a law like expropriation without compensation is passed upon that context, and if laws are passed that remove mother tongue education and parents' influence in their own schools, then it becomes a larger picture, which is worrying. And that is why organizations in South Africa, as well as us at the Orania movement, wanted to have our voices heard internationally, making it clear that there definitely is reasons for concern.
So you were sort of speaking of that, but how have the South African leaders or officials responded to Trump's statement?
So we see a lot of anger in South Africa currently, a concerning amount of anger. The government is throwing accusations around. A political party represented in AfriForum, a political party represented in Parliament, is now laying high treason charges against some of the whistleblowers. This happened this morning, that a case of high treason against the government of South Africa was laid because people made this known internationally. That is also of concern. The party is Mkhonto iSizwe, sharing a name with the communist armed wing from the Cold War. There are things happening that is to a great concern. Also, we're seeing a lot of blame from the presidency in South Africa, from political parties, saying that Afrikaners and white people in South Africa have now led the country into a problem, and they are traitors and so on, not taking responsibility for the act and the bill that they passed, but rather claiming that the whistleblowers are the ones who are now guilty of this. So the rhetoric has been extremely distasteful. It's been extremely, a lot of fingers being pointed at people, and it is a developing story, to say the least. So we hope that through asking for more recognition, the world can know about what's happening here and can know about the kind of the circumstances and how it's playing out.
And what impact could Trump's threats to cut US funding have on South Africa?
Well, we will see a large impact. The sanctions that the American government is threatening with will have a major impact in South Africa. America is an important trade partner. A lot of our minerals and mineral resources are sold to the US, where that is, refined and so on. We received a lot of, not we, but the South African government received a lot of US aid. So it's very concerning. What's more concerning is the fact that good relations are being destroyed. We see that the South African government is removing the de facto embassy of Taiwan from the capital in Pretoria, citing the fact that the relationship with China is more important to the South African government than the relationship with Taiwan and as an ally of the US. We also saw that the South African government is now directing a lot more of its attention to BRICS, to Russia and to China, looking for their favor as they are opposing the American stance. So really actually quite a concerning time here in South Africa.
So do you think that the US should be involved in South Africa's domestic policies, or is it an overreach?
That's a question that can lead to a very long discussion. When are any country to be involved in another country's affairs? It's a hard question, but I think when the level of things are happening, such as we're seeing in South Africa, it is fantastic for us as a minority nation to see that there are whistleblowers and there are helping hand out there about these things like property expropriation, about the fact that 80 people are murdered every day in South Africa with 150 rapes on a daily basis. Those are the crime statistics out of South Africa. And something else that we see is these rhetoric against Afrikaners. So for us, it's concerning, and for that reason, we are very glad and thankful that some international powers are giving us an opportunity. We only have a very simple message to the White House and to other states and other governments that are interested in what's happening, and if they want a sustainable, permanent solution that will strengthen stability in South Africa, the best idea would be to recognize a territory for Afrikaners. To recognize a territory where we can make some political decisions for ourselves and have political autonomy, which will be a safe space, so to speak, so that we can look at our own affairs and make decisions upon ourselves. I think that's a very important solution. We do not want to be refugees in another man's country. We are people who have been here for 400 years, and we have no intentions of just leaving our homes and our places behind, but we need a sustainable, stable solution. Orania and communities like Orania are stabilizing factors in the broader South Africa.
So how would you say that the issue has been reported in South Africa versus in the US, for example?
Well, in South Africa, it's a battle for the narrative at this stage. So it's a battle for who can control the narrative. I mean, you have the facts. The bill and the act was signed. The Bella Bill, which is the one on education, that was passed on a very, very, very sneaky manner, to say the least. But there's always competition for narrative. So the presidency and media that are pro the government have a certain perspective, while opposing views and opposing opposition parties and opposition civil rights organizations has got a different view. So there's definitely a battle for the narrative. On the one hand, the government claiming that nothing is wrong and they have no ill intentions toward Afrikaners. Well, on the other hand, these opposition parties, these parties in South Africa and civil rights organizations, they have been the canary in the coal mine, screaming, "Well, something is wrong. Please, world, direct your attention towards what's happening in South Africa."
And bringing it back to Trump, do you think that his comments are driven by the concerns for human rights, or do you think that there is a political motivation from your point of view?
I have no doubt that there must be some level of political motivation. South Africa has gone out against many allies of the US. However, these are also human rights issues. So I think it's a combination, and we are focusing on the human rights issues because obviously we are not players as Afrikaners in South Africa in the larger geopolitical scheme. I will give a final message just shortly, and that is really to say, in times like these, in uncertain times like these, it's a very uncertain time in South Africa right now. It is important to give the local groups and the local cultures of a region large say. Doing these things centrally, managing them centrally and pushing policy from above is not the correct way. Let people and groups and nations like the Afrikaner, but also other in South Africa, other cultures, let them from a ground level help dictate the situation in South Africa. We as Afrikaners, we ask for territorial recognition. I think it's the best way forward. It's the most stable way. It's the way with the most input from people on ground level. And let other nations and other groups in South Africa have the same. That's what we are requesting. And we ask governments to intervene. We ask them to add to our voice and to help amplify that and help bring certainty and stability along.
Thank you very much, Joost Strydom, Chief Executive at the Orania movement.
Thank you, Rebecca. It is a privilege, and thank you for the platform.
And thank you for watching Riks Europe.